members, are we ready? And a beautiful April day. I'd like to call to order the 906th meeting of the Board of Directors of Alexandria Sanitation Authority, now known as AlexRenew Enterprises. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Caldarelli, seconded by Mr. Dickinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Ms. Huff, are there any members of the public? Traffic again. Moving us back. Okay. Let's jump right into the consent agenda, which is only the minutes of our March meeting. Give you a second to look at it. Motion to approve the minutes as they appear.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now the most important business of the evening. Consideration of the draft operating budget, which was reviewed by the entire Finance and Audit Committee back in March. Mr. Carl, would you like to present?
So I think just initially just a budget book from the preliminary draft. We did receive some comments from the Board of Finance and Audit Committee. The budget remains the same as it was in the preliminary draft. The budget did not change from the previous version that's presented, that's included in the packet tonight. We did, per the request of Finance and Audit Committee, update table 931 on page 15 to line up with the org chart that we presented during the Finance and Audit Committee presentation. That shows 122.5 FTEs. At the request of the Finance and Audit Committee and the Board, we also reworded the language on the Commonwealth Interceptor project information sheet. And one other update with respect to numbers was the prior year spend. We had updated numbers for our IT department. Prior year, this fiscal year, we updated that spend as well. Those were the major changes from the preliminary draft to this evening's draft that's included in your book.
Okay. Any discussion from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Jenks.
my report from the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Some summary of will lead to two resolutions that we would pass tonight to move the process forward to the next step for public hearing in May, and then our consideration of adoption on June 20th, the budget, the CIP, and the rate. We met, as indicated, on the 28th of March. Mr. Dickinson and I are in the committee. We had a majority of the board present and participating, so it was a robust discussion. We reviewed what our CEO, Mr. Carl, gave us as the preliminary draft in 21st of March, and the result, as Mr. Carl just indicated, is a slightly revised draft budget, CIP, and proposed rates in a public hearing board's consideration. And just providing a kind of a thumbnail summary, the operating budget is $33 million. And the CIP are based on the strategic plan for this organization, financial policies, the indenture that really allows us to borrow in the bond market, but basically gives the bondholders assurance that we will do certain things to protect them that are good financial practices. So this budget is consistent with that. The increase in the operating budget is 8.5%, 2.6 million net. You can say, where does it come from? 2.1 of that, 2.6 comes from merit increases. The unfunded market rate adjustment that was put in place months ago. We need to do that, as this board has previously discussed, to keep competitive. This is a tight job market here and many other places, and we need to make sure that we have we can attract and retain the best employees. Like everybody else, we're dealing with health insurance increases. This is the year the state retirement system tells localities and authorities these are your new rates, and rates almost always go up, and our DRS rates have. In the non-personal area, our electricity, our chemical line items up 33%. Not something we control. That's what happens. And what are we contractually obligated to do in regards to paying our for sludge disposal or the charges that Arlington County makes on us for the portion of Arlington County's plant that we use. All led to a $2 million increase, or a $1.9 million increase in the non-personnel costs. And however, there were changes in the accounting and some other changes. So the general administrative category went down like 1.4 million. And so the net increase was only 2.6 million. Debt service is another major piece of the budget, and that is up, as we've been saying, for a number of years. Would happen because of AlexRenew from 14.7 to 16.4 million, and that can be attributed 100% to AlexRenew. I was looking at the numbers today, and because AlexRenew debt service was up about, I think, about $5 million. But our total budget is up $5 million. What happened in that is we borrowed money in 2020, and that debt service is now off our books. And so if we basically had not had AlexRenew and everything else, all other things being the same, our budget would not have gone up, may have gone down, approximately. And however, it's AlexRenew that is driving the debt service, and that in effect is driving the rates. I was looking today at the chart Carl provided us back a number of meetings ago, which the top line is what we thought our debt service would be, what the impact of AlexRenew would be on customers, and the bottom part of this gray line is what it actually is. And because we pulled down 140 million in state aid through lobbying work with this organization at the city government, our General Assembly delegation, and some good decisions by the governor's staff and the governor. Our initial number was something like 50 million, and it notched it up. We ended up with 140 million. So every dollar for state aid went up, our borrowing costs went down. That and the fact that the interest rates are rock bottom, so we're in good shape. So our debt service is really going to be significantly less because of those two actions that have taken place since these initial projections. But it's still going to cost us money, no doubt about it. The CIP is very important for the utilities. Most of our cost, the biggest budget, if you look at it this year, it's the capital improvement program. It's far by multiples more than the operating budget. And like using kind of following best practices, our CIP is 10 years. We won't see that in a lot of governmental organizations. Sometimes you see 6, sometimes you see 3 or 4 years. This is 10 years now. Years 9 and 10 going to be science? No. But at least thinking out in what we need to face, what those numbers may be, it's a best practice to look out those 10 years. And for 10 years, that's 842 million. 31% of that is AlexRenew. And for our fiscal 24, the CIP is 212 million, and telling, because AlexRenew is our major project at this point, 76% of it, 162 million of next year's CIP is AlexRenew. And it's critically important that we provide our good capital investments, both new projects and just reinvesting in what has already been put in place, which periodically needs upgrading. There is one notable change in the capital improvement program since the preliminary draft was presented to this board. Based on discussion at our committee meeting, some of the language has been changed on the Commonwealth Interceptor. It is talking about a need for, I think the original language was something along the lines of that preliminary engineering would be done on the expansion for 2024, and now the key milestones for 24 reads complete preliminary engineering report, including alternatives analysis. So what's in effect is headed towards saying is we need to look at our alternatives broader than just a single solution. We may come back to the single solution at the end of the day, but we need to look jointly with the city. The city is, my understanding is, my conversations with a few folks and our CEO's conversation is open to broadly looking at alternatives analysis to see to the city's investing there. We may need to invest there. What's the best solution, including looking at city policies in regards to infiltration and inflow from private downspouts and storm drains and things of that sort of thing contribute to the big increase, huge increase in volume that we get from the Commonwealth. I think the revised language on the Commonwealth Interceptor page at this point, I think still needs some work. And before we get to the public hearing, I'll circulate draft language on that to make it a little less, this is what we're going to do, versus this is what we may need to do, but we need to do the alternatives analysis first jointly with the city in order to determine, because it is I think it's the next biggest single CIP item up after river remediation. Sure. And the bigger the cost, the more study needs to be done to make sure what the right alternatives are. So this is that.
And that's a very energetic neighborhood, by the way.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it certainly is. And we need to be able to justify better, even if we end up exactly in the same place as a 72-inch pipe. We need to be able to justify that we've looked at every alternative, gone down every cul-de-sac to determine that is the right answer. That is the right answer. Because if not, we'll get delayed.
And who else, and who pays for it?
Yeah, that will be which parts of the system need improvement. On certain parts of the system would be our responsibility. A lot of parts of the system would be the city's responsibility. At the end of the day, it ends up all in sewer rate. It ends up impacting the same people, but in the end of the day, it's whose responsibility is to execute it and pay for it. So the results of all the CIP and the infrastructure investments in the operating budget and the debt service is a need for a rate increase of 5.4% in 24 and 5.1 in 25. That is less than the rate increases that we've had. I think the chart I saw went back to fiscal 20, which was a 12% increase in that year. So significantly less than 20 and less than every year prior to that. As I said earlier, it's also less than what was initially projected for significantly less. And the cost to the ratepayer is $2.70 a month, the average residential ratepayer. So it's a reasonable number. It's at least with fiscal 24. It's depending on where you measure inflation. It's either at what inflation has been in the last 12 months or slightly below it. So that's another way of looking at it. And as I said earlier, if we didn't have AlexRenew debt service, we'd be talking about probably having a flat rate for next year. But because that is a mandate, we agreed to undertake it in the city. That's the result. That's the impact. There's one issue also besides Common Interceptor that is kind of not resolved, and that is how do we better impact lower income ratepayers. That we discussed at the committee meeting. I have written a memo earlier on the subject. It is too complicated an issue to resolve as far as the fiscal 24 cycle and rates. It also may take partnering with the city in order, because our hands are tied in regards to what we can use our rate dollars for. But there are options that the staff is going to be looking at and able to maybe talk about some at our retreat. And so by the time we get to a year from now, we'll have a better idea of where things stand. So I think the came out of the discussion that we had was that the budget and CIP, they're well thought out. Thank staff for the good work they've done in making it clear and being responsive to us. The cost increases are either mandatory or they're prudent and necessary. There's very little optional program at an organization like this has. So I think the rates are reasonable, and there will be two motions that we need to take that I'll need to get us to the next step, which is having.
Before we do, let's see if we have any comments from the board. By the way, Mr. Jenks, this was without a doubt the best F&A presentation on budget we've ever had. I'm glad this is videotaped, because this is something to refer back to.
I've been doing budgets for 45 years. This may be the 45th or 46th year that I work on a budget for explaining stuff.
Any questions from the board?
The only concern I have is on the one pager that somehow we say in here that this also covers some increases in our operational costs, which is true. It's not, I mean, yes, the largest part is river, but we still have increases in operations, and that shouldn't be mentioned.
This is the public notice you're talking about. Thoughts on how we might say that, or you want us to?
I made some
read that over?
suggestions. I don't have a copy of what I
The
suggested.
public notice does not reference the program.
Sorry?
The resolution of intent does not reference the program. It's in tab 3.
This one pager you're talking about?
Resolution of intent.
What we're here for this
This
evening
is what
is
gets published,
Okay.
and that really doesn't mention anything about budgets. I think you're talking about talking points.
I'm talking about the talk.
Let's focus on sort of the resolution of intent, because that's what actually gets published.
Okay.
Talking points are talking points.
Yeah, okay.
If there are no comments from the board regarding the next step, Mr. Jenks, would you like to make a motion about the budget? Right, we'll have one motion on the budget and then another motion on the rates.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we authorize the CEO to issue the appropriate public notices for a consideration for public hearing and consideration of the FY24 draft operating budget and capital budget for a public hearing on May 20th.
Second by Mr. Field.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Jenkins, we've already talked about rates, and we're tightly bound to budget, of course. That's with another motion on the rates.
I would move, we have as tab 3, resolution on, resolution intent to adopt and change certain rates, fees, and charges. And I would propose that the proposed resolution be adopted by the board, and that would put out the rates for public hearing, advertised with rates for public hearing on May 20th at the same time, same day we are hearing the budget public hearing comments.
Counselor, in the resolution, do we have to mention the effective date of the rates, July 1st? Probably not. It's in the
Yeah, it's on, it's in the,
It's in the bottom of the
resolution. Okay. Is there a second to that?
second.
Ms. Calvarelli, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we did pass around, Mr. Dickinson, we will update the talking points per your comment. We'll recirculate those. We did include drafts of talking points. Our plan is to start the outreach for the public hearing tomorrow with website updates. So we included a little timeline in the brown folder on your desk of what our outreach plan is for community outreach for rates. So we will have the ads going out to the Alexandria Gazette packet. But in addition to that, we'll also be updating our website, AlexRenew.com tomorrow, rivernew.com. We'll also be putting, in addition to the public notice that we just approved, we'll also be doing additional ads on Facebook to notify the public of the upcoming hearing, as well as bill stuffers. That outreach, that community outreach will continue through social media between now and the time we have the public hearing on May 20th. So there's a little timeline in there to kind of give you the outline of what the next steps are.
Oh, that's
And-
helpful.
So we'll update the talking points as well for you all, for if you're asked questions by the public. We also gave you a flyer that we shared with city council, so they're aware of the proposed rate increase. And we also included a draft of the rates, rules, and regulations document that would be available at the May 20th public hearing. It has a little hand design on it that looks like hazel. So those are the 4 items that you have in your folder. Draft.
It's interesting to note the increase in our rate and the increase in stormwater rate are exactly the same. 5%.
Coincidence?
Coincidence. Any other discussion on item 5, budgets and rates? If not, let's move right into new business. Update on the administration of the AlexRenew tunnel contract. Mr. Carl.
So it's been a while since we met as a board to talk about the tunnel project from a design build perspective. If you remember back in 2018 and 2019, we had some industry experts in here talking about design build and how we're going to implement the contract and some key administration terms that we included in the contract. What we wanted to do tonight with the board 2.5 years into construction is just give you an update of where we are with respect to administration of the contract. That's what's mainly focusing on funding and where we stand on budget. So we're going to just quickly go through an overview of the program. Won't spend a lot of time there. Talk about the delivery methods at a high level that we pursued. Talk about some of those key administration terms we talked about back in 2018 and 2019, and then just give an update of where we stand on the tunnel project. So we all know what we're building. We have a 2.1 mile long, 12-foot diameter tunnel, 6-foot diameter interceptor, 180 MGD and 20 MGD pumping station, 4-story superstructure. All this was bid out December 2020 at a total construction cost of $454 million. So when we talk about the contract tonight, we're talking about the contract to build the tunnel system project that we have with Trailer Shade Joint Venture. So when we initially met back in 2018, 2019, we spent a lot of time with the board on the delivery model. We looked at traditional design bid build, CMAR, progressive design build, but where we landed was on fixed price design build. Mainly, it had the least schedule risk. It was used on underground projects, so the market was used to the fixed price design build model, and we could really balance technical approach and price. That's why we landed on fixed price. What does a fixed price design build contract look like? If you remember, in early 2020, we came up here and we had a stack of documents, 10,000 pages of our, what we call request for proposal documents, really made up of a few items. We have our contract terms and our conditions, that's your agreement, general conditions. We have the technical requirements, which are criteria on how the design build team would design and construct the tunnel system project. We have our geotechnical and environmental reports. Those are the baseline reports and data reports. We have our drawings, and then all of our addendum. And on this job, we ended up having 8 addendum for the AlexRenew tunnel system project. All of that makes up what we call the contract documents. And we administer the tunnel project from these set of contract documents. If you remember, we hired a owner's advisor that's helping us manage the implementation of the job. In addition to that, we hired a resident engineering and inspection team to make sure that we're meeting the quality that we put in the contract documents in the field. The agreement for this job was signed in November 2020. Notice to proceed was then given on December 1st, 2020. So when we met leading up to the contract development and talked to the board, we talked about a few main clauses that we included in our contract. One is a differing site conditions clause that's tied to our baseline reports and our contract documents. We talked about risk assessments, both qualitative and quantitative risk assessments, and how we use those. We're going to walk through each of these tonight. Allowance payment items, what we call below the line. And then 2 other ideas that are unique to these types of large underground projects. One is partnering, and the second is our dispute resolution board. So we're going to walk through the rest of this presentation, mainly structured around these 5 main administration topics. And we're also going to give you a highlight of where we stand on spending 2.5 years into the job. So we showed this slide back in 2019. We do utilize risk management for this project. It's a cycle that starts with our planning phase. In the planning and design phase, we developed a risk register. We had hundreds of risks on the risk register that we ranked and prioritized, and then worked through the design phase to mitigate those risks. We either mitigated those risks by getting a property agreement negotiated with a third party, or we designed the risk out of the job. The risks that we could not mitigate completely were then fed into a Monte Carlo analysis to come up with a quantitative cost analysis. And that quantitative cost analysis was used as a project contingency allowance, what we call an allowance that's below the line. It's an owner carried contingency for a project for the risks that we could not mitigate in advance of the design phase, or as part of the design phase. Since then, since we've issued the contract, and that value of 17 million or so was included in the contract. That was included in the bid of $454 million. Since then, we've been working with the design builder to update and track risks as they develop on the job through the construction phase. And we use that to see how we're doing with respect to schedule as well through the risk register process. The partnering piece is pretty unique to design build projects. Large, heavy civil projects typically leverage partnering. And what partnering is every quarter we get together as a team. That includes the owner's advisor, resident engineer, and the design build team. And we work through issues. What we did at the very beginning of the job is we set up a charter with a partnering facilitator for the project, and we speak to that charter at every session. And that charter really had 6 main success factors. really centered around third-party coordination. We know we're in the community. Making sure we don't break the plant, keep it operational throughout construction, minimize schedule risk, collaborate, make sure everyone goes home safe, and make sure we deliver a quality job at the end of the project. And really, partnering is really gives you a few ways to vent issues, resolve issues as a group. And this partnering, again, comes from the highest level on the Trailer Chase side. Their president attends our partnering sessions, as well as myself and our AlexRenew director, Caitlin, from our team. So they're held quarterly to really foster collaboration between the parties. And that was structured in our contract. And this third-party facilitator we selected collaboratively with the design builder. We all got a bunch of names, threw them in a hat, talked about who was best fit for the project. And we ended up with Sally McGee, who's been our partnering facilitator since December 2020. In addition to partnering, we also have what we call a dispute resolution board. A dispute resolution board is a board of industry experts that we can leverage if we can't manage disputes at the project level. If we get to an impasse on a claim or a differing site condition, it can be escalated to the dispute resolution board. Regardless if there are any disputes, and we have not had one yet to date that we had to raise to the dispute resolution board, we meet quarterly. And for the most part so far, our dispute resolution board meetings are the same attendees as partnering, a slimmed down version of that. And we meet and just present progress to the dispute resolution board every quarter. In addition to that, the dispute resolution board has provided all correspondence between the owner and the design builder. So they see every claim letter, every differing site letter, our response goes to them for their review so they can keep a pulse on the health of the project through their lens as a DRB. So our dispute resolution board member, again, selected in a similar way as the partnering facilitator. We work collaboratively with the design builder to come up with names, and then we saw who was the best fit for the project and asked them if they'd be able to participate. So we have Andrew Ness is our legal dispute resolution board member. He was on the Blue Plains Tunnel in the District of Columbia. Fred Kelly out of Ohio worked a lot on Ohio's tunnel projects, Northeast Regional Ohio Sewer District's projects. He's our construction management professional. And then Gabe Fernandez is our geotechnical expert that sits on our dispute resolution board. Mr. Ness is the chair of our dispute resolution board. There's always a chair as well.
Excuse me, why do you have geotechnical?
We're a heavy geotech project.
Okay.
That's why. A lot of the disputes that might come up during a job like this are usually geotechnical in nature. And you're talking about lenses and clays and things like that.
Okay.
And they help decipher some of that, or they can give you an opinion. There's two things the dispute resolution board can do. You can take an advisory opinion to them, which is not formal, and they can give you their feel on it. That can happen at a regular quarterly meeting, or you can take a formal dispute to them for their review. We have not done either to date. So tied to managing change on a project of this magnitude, our contract included a differing site condition clause. This is tied to change management. And really a differing site condition clause, we put together a set of contract documents where we did our own engineering work, put it out in the street. We did 97 borings, wrote a geotechnical baseline report, tested all those soil borings for contamination, developed an environmental baseline report. So if something differs from what we put in the contract, it's subject then to a differing site conditions clause. And what we can do in our contract is the design builder can submit a DSC or differing site condition clause. It comes into the owner for review. And then there's three things that can happen. It can be accepted, and then we issue a contract change through a change order or work change directive and pay for that additional change through a project contingency allowance that we established as part of our risk management process. The second part is the design builder could withdraw the DSC, which we have had happen to date. And we come to an agreement where the change is unwarranted. Or the third thing is we get to an impasse and we can't negotiate the change. That's when we get kicked up to the dispute resolution board, perhaps first as an advisory opinion, After that, it could be a formal opinion. We have not, again, gotten to this point to date. And to date, we've mined 1,300 feet and we've excavated all of our shafts. So a lot of the geotech risk for the shaft work is gone. So what remains on this job from a risk standpoint is the ground conditions we're going to encounter as part of our mining process. Remember, we set a baseline for what the design builder can anticipate with respect to ground conditions for mining. So that's the remaining risk from a major DSC standpoint. Most of the other sites are opened up. We have holes in the ground, excavated, the rest is building concrete.
So the contamination that you avoided, let's put it that way, particularly up at Pendleton Street, you were right on. No surprise.
We have found what we expected at Pendleton Street. If you remember, we did in our boring program find that a lot of that site was contaminated by petroleum products from previous uses of the site. We do sniff testing of all of our soil that comes out of the ground before it gets hauled off, but we did encounter portions of soil that were contaminated by lead. And they're contaminated by lead and considered hazardous due to the potential to leach through a T-clip. And we have found those soils. We have found more of those soils than we initially baselined, which means the design builder was allowed to submit a site condition clause. There was more soil than we initially anticipated, and we've executed contract changes to handle it.
Did you ever come up with what the source of that lead was?
Yeah, and we actually had it a couple of years ago. There was some sort of process there that had lead-lined equipment. I forget what they did. I'd have to go back and look at it. It had something to do with sulfate or something like that. And our guess is they crushed that stuff and just buried it. That's our guess. It was a byproduct of that. I'd have to go back and read my notes.
But as far as any residuals from the chemical plant that was there, we avoided that?
It's not hazardous. It's
Okay.
contaminated, not hazardous. And so it just goes to the landfill for daily cover. The hazardous soil has to be handled in a specific way. If you remember, we put it in, what we ended up doing is we got sealed containers, sealed roll-off containers, put it in there, seal it up, haul it up.
Okay.
Like we said we would do, I'd like to set up 2 decontamination areas.
Question, do we, for what the boring machine is now pulling out of the ground, do we test that, or is it, even though it's been underground for a million years, you still test?
We do. Yep, we test 2 things. We test the air for methane gas, and then we test the soil for anything that we might want to test for in the soil before we take it to the landfill. We have to test for that stuff to dispose at the landfill. And if you remember, we use a conditioner to mine, so that conditioner is embedded with the soil paste, earth paste that comes out the back end, so it goes to a landfill for cover. You would consider that contaminated because we have a surfactant in there. But we still have to test to make sure we clear the landfill requirements. So that's a DSC. When we talk about managing risk on the project, we talk about above the line and below the line. Above the line, I'll just get everything up here. We're getting fancy with PowerPoint. Above the line is the design builder's bid. It's in lump sum work. They bid a TBM mobilization cost of $24 million, and then intervention time and stoppages to maintain the tunnel boring machine. So we prescribed some of these items with work stoppages and intervention times to reduce the risk of an issue happening with the TBM. So everything above the line, above that orange line, was bid by the design builder back in November and executed back in November 2020. That's what came in the proposal, their price proposal. Remember, we had a tech proposal, price proposal, put them together, pick best value. That was in their price proposal. Everything below the line is what we included in this price proposal form when the contract went out. So we set a project contingency, as I mentioned. That contingency primarily came from our risk management process of $17 million. We also have an escalation clause to manage escalation on the project. That was a result of our COVID allowances of around $20 million. We have a permitting and third-party coordination allowance 2.3 million. We split the cost of partnering dispute resolution board. We have a allowance for pumping station equipment, and then other allowance items of 4.5 million. One of those is paving at the wastewater plant when we're done. They can be accessed a few ways. Work change directive for a change order. That's how you access the project contingency allowance. So you go through that DSC process. Escalation COVID, we're paying out payout by payout by payout. So any inflationary impacts on the job are being offset somewhat by the owner. And when I say that, the design builder owns reasonable escalation up to 5%, and we're covering the rest through this allowance item up to a total payment of $20 million. Permitting third-party coordination and the partnering and pump station equipment are all addressed through the payout process. For example, if we need a permit from a city, design builder goes and gets it, sends us the invoice, we pay. But we wanted to set an allowance so it didn't throw off how the job was bid or priced at that time. To date, out of all those allowance items, we spent 10%, 2.5 years into the job. I also want to mention that we've excavated all the shafts on the job and got the tunnel boring machine launched, 1,300 feet into full production mining. That remains, 90% remains. We expect the escalation in COVID allowance to be spent down in the next 12 months. And that's really a administrative process for getting paperwork in as opposed to an impact. We expect that money is going to be expended.
So what percentage would that take off?
Can't do the math that fast.
Okay.
Anybody else do math that fast?
Half.
Half?
A little less than half.
So we do expect that allowance item to get paid down over the next year. But that still leaves our project contingency around 17. I think we spent a couple $100,000 out of that ECI today. As we mentioned, this is overall AlexRenew spend. As of at the end of March, we have expended just about $300 million on the program itself. I would like to also mention that as Mr. Jinks mentioned, we had Virginia Clean Water Revolving Loan Fund. We've expended that $185 million loan for the tunnel project, and we're going to be going over to WIFIA now to start drawing on our WIFIA loan. We have not yet gotten the grant, the $90 million grant from the state. We're still working through that process.
Any reason for the holdup on that, or is it just administrative?
It is an administrative holdup with the state. This is the first time they've had to distribute these types of funds, and DEQ, it's through DEQ. They're working through their own administrative process. It's not a risk that we're not getting it. We were the first CSO grant to be issued.
Part of these are federal funds.
Correct.
Right. So
Sorry.
part of these are federal funds with the states on the hook if we don't do something right.
Okay.
So you can see the new federal rules. Well, a lot of them are old federal rules, but the package together is different. Trying to figure out and protect us. But I think if you just stop with the
We've been working with the loan department pretty closely. We've given them, since we have a WIFIA and we've provided the quarterly report to them for them to use as a template, potentially, if that helps them, because WIFIA is a federal fund. So we've been working with DEQ and their staff to try and get this moving.
Mr. Carr, a couple of questions. You mentioned that before the bid, we did 97 borings. Were they along? How many of those were roughly? How many were along the path?
All of them were either at the tunnel or at a shaft. So they're either concentrated around our construction staging area sites by the shaft, along the tunnel, and along Hooks Run. For the tunnel on a job like this, I don't know, every 1,000 feet or so, and then when we hit an area and trying to find it more, remember the cobbles that we found? We did them every 500 feet. We did sonic boring so we get through the cobbles. By the old Ford plant. So they're all either at a construction site or along the
So the geotech risk is well understood.
Yes, and the machine's been designed for the ground conditions that we put in the contract.
So when it hits some cobbles, no problem, or do they have to change? Or will you find
I don't
out?
know, do you remember when you saw Hazel? She had these little kind of like teeth, like they look like this all around her, little F's going around her. When they get to the cobble section, they usually put those grizzly bars on to push the cobbles around the machine, so they're not taking them in. So there's bells and whistles like that to minimize the risk. That's why she has them. I think they're off right now. She's in more of an open mode because we're in play.
Now, Mr. Carl, now a speculative question, for which there is no right answer. On page 3, you don't have to flip back. We talked about design bid build versus fixed price design build. When we made that decision as a board, way back in 2019, we made that decision. We weren't sure what we were getting into, but it looks like that was the right decision.
Yes, I think a design build for the complexity of this job, a design build approach was the right answer.
So here's the speculative question. If we had chosen design bid build, where do you think we'd be today?
We'd be with a low bidder and behind schedule.
So unhappy and late. I think you're right.
The design bid build, when we looked at this, did not meet. It did at the time. We could not make the schedule work. And then you're sitting on a low bid, and you're not having any of this dialogue with the people that are building the job. So you can't make changes to your terms and conditions. You can't get feedback. You can't collaborate. So we're really we're hoping the contractor priced the job the same way as the second place contractor. What we ended up getting around our collaborative delivery is everybody got a full understanding of how the contract was drafted. They got a full understanding of how we were going to administer the contract, and it was at least priced fairly on the same terms. I mean, we had no float going in, but at least it had a shot to make it.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I remember that decision, and we were struggling with, I think some of us, I know I was a little uncomfortable with design build. And looking back, was a critical, correct decision. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
No, it's very good.
Very good. Very informative. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Item 7 on the agenda, tab 4, monthly outcomes. We had many outcomes in the month of March. Mr. Carl or staff?
Maybe starting with the CEO report. I mean, first I want to mention that Mr. Hill, if you've mentioned this to the board, but Mr. Dickinson is going to be stepping down from Secretary Treasurer on June 21st. So we will be working with council to seek a new board member. That does throw a wrinkle a little bit into our plans for the August board retreat. We will likely not have a new board member by then, so we wanted to propose rescheduling the board retreat for early January.
I think that works fine.
We expect to go to we expect the documents go to council sometime in September. That would give the new board member the ability to participate in the retreat and also help set our strategic outcomes and mission and vision.
I was led to believe from the city clerk that the appointment would be made in June.
I guess the information we received, Mr. Dickinson, is that you have to vacate the position before it gets introduced to council, is my
We
understanding.
want you to stay.
Well, I'm gonna be here through the 21st.
Yeah, so what's important to us is getting through the budget process.
So, okay, so they can't advertise it till.
And advertise that they can't appoint. They can't appoint, because the seat's filled.
they start the process.
So they start the process in June?
The application process, I don't know if it can start now or not, but I think from what we heard from the clerk is they can't fill the position until,
Okay,
And they're on.
and they're off in August.
that's right. Okay.
I don't know if you can make it to July or not.
I was hoping that.
Don't get any ideas, we need you here.
What I'd suggest is maybe our chair talk to the mayor. You can run, right?
I may do that.
Offline, and to see whether or not maybe he could talk with the clerk. There's a, put it this way, there's a way things are normally done, and there's a way things can be done. And it's possible that this one might be able to be done different than the norm, given our circumstances, and given the fact this is only 5 members on a board.
Yeah.
So losing 20% of a body.
And a key 20%. No, we'll see the mayor tomorrow,
And he can, I think he
and
would
I've got,
be interested in making sure that the clerk is being as flexible as possible.
and I think we want to do due diligence to find the best possible candidate. And let's do that in a non-hurried way. And really look around and find the right candidate. And that takes time.
It does.
It takes time to do that right, so. We'll all have that discussion with the mayor tomorrow. I've got some follow-up questions to the city clerk as well. But the impression I'm getting is the way they do it is pretty hard set. But the mayor can always decide.
Good luck.
We'll miss you.
Well, I miss I've been on for almost 11 years.
Very active.
And it's been a momentous 11 years. And I think where things were when we started,
And you were in the old building,
we were in the old building, no one knew who we were.
and you were the ASA.
And, well, no, you had already rebranded. But then we came out from behind the fence. This building, the Santa facility, and I remember the first hearing we had on the pumping station. I think that taught us a lot as far as what the community, how interested they were in this. And we listened to it. And I think that's made a huge difference. Also, I'd like to point out that in my years of being active in the city, I have never heard a compliment from the Alexander Federation of Civic Associations. You guys got it
Last month.
last month.
Yeah.
And you ought to treasure that. That's rare
Good son.
and deserved.
Good son.
Well, whatever he said, apparently everyone on the Federation, so I gather, I didn't attend it, were nothing but praise.
Yeah, they all concur.
So I think you can give yourself a pat on the back as far as community engagement goes. Keep it up. Because that's what's made the difference, I think, in large part. You listened, didn't talk down to people even when they had silly questions. You educated them, and they in turn educated us. So the product that we have is theirs, not ours, but theirs, because they're paying for it.
Well, we've got you for a few more months.
Oh, yeah, okay. Stick around a bit.
Thank you. On Sunday, we have this Sunday at 1 p.m. in Delray, the intersection of Delray and Mount Vernon Avenue, or right around that area, will be, Mr. Dickinson will be presenting the Alan Pickering Award in conjunction with the city this Sunday. That is at the bottom of the page, on the first page of the CEO report. And we're also promoting that via social media as well this week.
And that process, I think, went pretty well.
Sounds like it, yes.
Across the board, so.
If there's no questions in the CO report, moving on to the AlexRenew dashboard.
Mhm.
As the board knows, we have encountered a 60-day delay in the job that we don't anticipate recovering. So we did send letters to the General Assembly on April 3rd. We sent 23 letters total, and we also included a flyer, front and back, showing progress pictures of the job, and invited the Northern Virginia delegation and Senator Stewart to come up for a visit if they were willing. We also shared that letter with DEQ, a similar letter. We also talked to the Riverkeeper, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, council, city manager, and the legislative director for the city of Alexandria as well. So far to date, we've received nothing but positive feedback from the General Assembly, and we will be meeting with Senator Servell on the 27th. Unclear of the agenda, but he requested a meeting with our team, so we will be meeting on the 27th.
Here?
Virtual meeting.
Virtual.
As Senators Stewart responded,
Yes,
positive response.
positively. He thanked us. He said that he thanked us for the letter. Said that he knew how hard we were all working up here to get this project done, and he'd be setting up time to talk to us. We owe him an email and follow-up this week. No real questions from council, but we expect to talk about this a little bit tomorrow evening as well with our council board work group. In addition, AlexRenew on the dashboard, as you know, we're pile driving at Outfall 1. We have not received a single complaint to date. Knock on wood.
Mr. Carl, I've been driving by Pendleton site whenever I can, and I haven't heard a lot of
I'll send you a video. The challenge is when we're driving piles that deep, you know, they drive a pile and then they splice, and the splicing takes time because you're welding two piles together. That's maybe what's happening. It's not like a few minutes, it's hours sometimes for welding.
So if I drive by again, what's a good time?
We'll send you a text and tell you when to go out.
It's an early morning thing, all right?
They've been doing,
Seven.
it's been any time during the day so far. There's not really a specific time, so
I'm gonna-
it's happening.
Question on the schedule. While the project may not be completed by July 1, 2025, the state law requires the restoration. Can we start basically using the system before restoration?
So I think maybe the first thing to state, and we put this in some talking points, is that the delay that we're gonna see in the job's gonna be on the back end of the project at the plant. So we'll be done at Outfall 1 in November 24, Outfall 2 around the same time, and Hoofs Run will be done a year before that. A portion of the system, Hoofs Run, will flow to gravity to the plant, so we will get some CSO control through Hoofs Run. But unfortunately, the way the project works, the back end of the job is the pumping station. So getting that powered up and operational, we won't be able to take flow from Outfalls 1 and 2 until that pumping station is operational. So where we end up seeing this delay on the back is on the back end of the job. The last thing we want to be doing is taking CSOs into the tunnel and then having to get down in there, disinfect it, to repair a pump or, you know, get a pump operational and on the right set points every time it rains. So what we have to do is we have to get the system commissioned, and once it's commissioned, we can open everything up for flows from Outfalls 1 and 2.
Is it possible that if things worked out time-wise, that we could get the system commissioned without the last parts of the restoration being completed?
Unfortunately, we put substantial completion when we bid the job as July 1st, 2025. Substantial completion did not include restoration. It included operational. Yeah, 3 months after that is final completion. So we already gave up that float. Yeah, substantial's always been July 1st. Substantial means operational. So we're not gonna, we looked at ways to try and expedite that, but it ended up potentially adding more risk and time to the job.
Well, I presume you have a trials period, do you not?
Yeah, it takes about 3 months to get the system commissioned. Yeah, you have to go through all the testing of the pumps, valves, level sensors.
And the procurement for pumps, is that a big deal? And is that on a critical path?
Yeah, everything in the pump station's on the critical path. We have not heard, we're not sure yet with respect to the pumps. We have not heard anything negative about our procurement timeline, but we're just getting to that point. The last design package that went out was the pumping station. So that's getting ordered now. Those things are getting ordered now.
Any other questions on the deck?
Oh, I have a few more things, sorry. We have Jameson Avenue closures coming up in the fall. So you're gonna see a message board out there very shortly, notifying the community that we're closing Jameson for 3 months to get this run interceptor across. And then just an update on Hazel, we're in full production mining as of last Monday. We're on average, yesterday we did 110 feet, which was awesome. 80 feet per day is our average. Schedule-wise, we looked at 40 feet per day when we scheduled the job out, but we're doing 80 feet per day. Wow. It's not gonna make up enough time to get us past the, we might get 12 days made up of the 60. First 1,300 feet are done, 255 rings, and just a fun fact, a push for a ring is 15 minutes with the conveyor installed, and the erection of the ring is 20 minutes. So every 35 minutes, we're building a ring. It's pretty cool. If you look out into the site, you can see the vertical conveyor as well as the conveyor, horizontal conveyor for the tunnel. The taller thing is a horizontal conveyor.
And that's for moving the muck?
Yep, takes the muck from the heading all the way back to the plant.
Out of curiosity, where are we disposing of the fill?
A lot of it, I think, is going to somewhere in Maryland, Brandywine,
Someplace, okay.
landfill down there.
You have a bid on the 24.
Yes. Yes. So we have council board work group tomorrow night. Tunnel tours for the community are on the 6th of May. And then we're going to propose a few dates for the board, council, and SAG tunnel tours. It's good. We're gonna try and do it on a Saturday so we can get you up into the heading. We're looking at June 17th, June 24th, July 8th, or July 15th. So if we can get some feedback, I can send an email out separately. And have you all come out and get a tour.
And you'll give the mayor a chance to drive the tunnel.
It's pre-programmed, it's fine.
Don't put ideas in his head.
Let him have a picture sitting in the driver's seat.
All the pictures of the drivers.
Good.
Anything else on?
Just the financial report. We did spend some time with the Finance and Audit Committee talking about delinquencies. So maybe page 2.
Letters are going out.
Page of the delinquencies on.
Page 4.
So if you look at page 5, so we spent some time with the Finance and Audit Committee showing the delinquent accounts, and one of the excerpts from that presentation is included in attachment A, showing all the delinquent commercial and residential accounts throughout the city of Alexandria. They're in attachment A. The large circles are above $10,000. Orange are commercial, blue are residential. And that is the customer base that makes up.
I always have a blank page.
Yeah.
is what
Oh.
we, yeah, that's what we saw. Good.
Yeah, it's the same picture that we showed at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, same map. But as you can see, our delinquent accounts are pretty much well spread out throughout the city. Since the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, we have sent out over 500 letters to our delinquent accounts. They went out mainly last week, but since the large majority of them went out last week, but a few went out to the largest customers before our Finance and Audit Committee right after the last board meeting. And since then, we've seen the number of delinquent accounts go down by 51. The number is going to keep increasing month over month, even though we're seeing a decrease in accounts. So the number has been up is up to $959,000. Those letters that we sent out, we will be following up with customer service calls to the delinquent accounts. We're also actively sending text messages for payment plan options through Promise Pay. And we're also, through those text messages, still promoting LIWAP as well. There still is money remaining on LIWAP. In addition to that, we're running digital ads on social media for payment plans and LIWAP. So those letters just went out last week, so we're not seeing any impact in tonight's presentation. But we'll have a better sense when we get the data in next month to see how we're doing with respect to those letters that had gone out. The other thing that we wanted to note is that we're up to 55 accounts on LIWAP with about $50,000 spent in Alexandria for LIWAP.
How are we doing on some of the commercial accounts, the large commercial apartment accounts that were delinquent? Are they, have they paid, or are some of them paid, or?
Did you get a sense from that?
No, like Mr. Carl said, I mean, a lot of them were included in the 500 letters that just went out last week, so we haven't really seen any immediate returns or impact from that as of yet, but hopefully next month we could have a better update to share.
Are we making calls based on now this due priority?
Yeah, so we're doing two things. You know, we can leverage GCWW and we can leverage Promise, but for those larger accounts, we're using our in-house staff to make those calls directly, our customer service team directly to those large commercial. And there is one residential account that's up there as well. That we would consider large. So we're working through the process. I think the next step, you know, we follow up. We're looking at planning some door hangers as a next step to notify the account holders of the past due.
Could you clarify a little bit about how that works? So obviously the amount keeps going up because it's cumulative, but presumably some of the delinquent accounts had an impact maybe around COVID, got behind, but presumably some of them started paying again. So how does that, I'm trying to understand, as we're dropping, like, are they paying kind of the back? Are they paying their most recent? Or are the people not paying the recent at all?
I think the challenge is when COVID hit, the payment plans were extended to 48 months. So we're seeing that impact of the 48-month payment plan. I think as a team, we're looking to go back to where we were for people who are not currently on payment plans and have them to be a bit more aggressive. They were relaxed during COVID, due to COVID. So 48-month payment plans, it's going to take a while to get some of these bills paid down.
Do we have are we thinking 4 or 5 years out? Are we thinking hopefully sooner?
We have, I guess the best case scenario is we can look back and what happened in 2016. What happened in 2016, I think AlexRenew at the time had a delinquent account amount of like $600,000. And we did this round of outreach plus the door hangers, plus phone calls and robocalls, things like that. And I think got it knocked down to $80,000 within the course of a year or two, something like that. I think it's gonna probably take longer, given our account and how many customers our value, and how many customers are currently on a 48-month payment plan. Some of our largest commercial users have that flexibility on that payment plan right now, and that's something that was inherited through the COVID pandemic,
So it's probably gonna be at least
3 years.
Out of curiosity, is American Water experiencing the same thing?
I'm not sure. We'd have to talk to them.
Because I'm wondering if there's any correlation between people not paying their bills and not paying our bills.
I'm not sure.
Are they still saying they're gonna turn you off? So people,
Yeah, so I think
some correlation, but not.
our goal is, we're doing our outreach now to get to the ability to shut off through American Water.
Do we know how much of the roughly $1 million is outstanding on payment plans?
Yeah, I think we looked at that last meeting. Was it 250,000 on payment plans?
How much?
About a quarter.
I think we're on a journey of discovery.
Agreed.
I think that map begins to reveal some very interesting patterns.
Sure does.
That could be a whole bunch of factors leading to this. Good.
And Mr. Jenks, we'll be sure in our next communication to include a link to the city e-news message that you shared with us about the housing.
I'd like to thank you, Mr. Carl, and your team for your prompt action. You've revealed more insight, understanding on this issue in the last couple of weeks. And again, we'll find out as the letters go out, we get reactions, find out. I bet there's a different story for every town. Anything else on financial update? Any other topics? At this point, I would like to move that we go into closed session pursuant to section 2.23711 Code of Virginia. I would move that the board enter into a closed meeting for the purpose of the discussion of real property acquisition for public purposes for the disposition of publicly held property and the consultation with legal counsel employed by the public authority regarding specific legal matters. The discussion in an open forum would adversely affect the bargaining position of the public body. Do I have a second? All in favor? Let's take a break and then meet in the other room. Thank everyone for being here.
Will do. It was good. It was good.
It has cookies.